Hey man, there's a moment in every man's journey where he's going to face a challenge that doesn't show up as a fistfight or a loud argument. It shows up quietly through a test. A moment when she doesn't raise her voice, but she raises the stakes. A moment when she says something sharp, shows up late, cancels last minute, or throws out a disrespectful comment, not to hurt you, but to see what you're made of. And in that moment, your reaction doesn't just define how she sees you, it defines how you see yourself. Because when a woman pushes your limits, it's not just about her, it's about you deciding whether your self-respect has a breaking point. When she tests you, the weak man folds, he becomes apologetic, he over-explains, he sacrifices his standard just to avoid tension. But the man who knows who he is, he breathes, he pauses, he doesn't flinch, and in that stillness, he draws the line, not with threats or anger, but with calm truth. And that truth sounds like this: that doesn't work for me. Simple, clean, final. Because a man with standards doesn't need to shout. His limits are firm without explanation. And when she hears that tone, not from emotion, but from principle, she feels it in her spine. See, women are emotional creatures, but they don't respect emotional men. They respect men who can contain emotion, men who stay in their frame while she tests the edges. Because when she pushes you, what she's really asking is this: can I trust you to hold the structure while I swirl through chaos? And if your frame breaks, if you get reactive, if you try to win her approval instead of standing your ground, she doesn't feel safe. She might enjoy the power, but she won't respect the man, because she knows deep down, if you break under pressure, you'll collapse when it really counts. You have to understand something vital here. Women don't push your limits because they hate you. They push them because they want to know what your edges are. They want to know what you'll tolerate. They want to know if your smile means you're soft, or if it's just a cover to a man who can walk away the moment his peace is disrespected. And the longer you allow your limits to be pushed without response, the more you teach her that your self-respect is for sale. But the second you respond with calm clarity, she learns something far more valuable. You're a man who knows how to enforce his value. Now, let's get real. Sometimes the test comes disguised as a joke, a playful insult, a just kidding kind of line that cuts a little too deep. And you have two choices in that moment: laugh along and absorb the disrespect, or pause, look her in the eye and say, "Don't talk to me like that." Not with drama, not with fire, just with presence. Because when your energy communicates that you're unfazed but firm, that's when she begins to feel your leadership, not through force, but through boundaries delivered with absolute certainty. Other times, she'll test you by pulling away. She'll go cold, distant, slow with replies, vague with her words, and again, she's watching to see if you'll chase, if you'll fold, if you'll start scrambling to fix the vibe. But the man who understands his value doesn't chase uncertainty. He gives space. He mirrors her distance. He doesn't beg for clarity. He moves with dignity. And that silence, that refusal to flinch, that's what makes her recalibrate. Because now she sees you're not emotionally dependent on her validation. You're emotionally anchored in yourself. When a woman pushes your limits, you must resist the urge to fix her perception. This is where most men slip. They feel the disrespect, and instead of asserting a boundary, they try to talk their way back into closeness. They try to win her affection with logic or emotional explanations, but when you try to convince her of your worth, you've already lost frame. The high-value man never explains why he deserves respect. He simply removes access when it's not given. And that removal, done calmly, is 10 times more powerful than any speech you could give. Sometimes, she'll bring chaos just to see what you'll do with it. She'll create conflict, stir drama, interrupt your peace, and the average man thinks he has to respond. But the man who knows who he is simply withdraws. He doesn't reward chaos with attention. He doesn't enter emotional quicksand. He protects his world, and when she realizes that her chaos can't crack your calm, she stops trying to create it, because now she knows this man values his energy more than he fears her distance. Women crave structure more than they admit. They crave the feeling of a man who won't be moved just because her emotions rise. And when you hold your center while she tests you, you're giving her something rare: stability, not control, not dominance, just unwavering presence. And in that presence, she finds something she's not used to, a man she can't shake and can't manipulate. And that tension, brother, that's what shifts her from testing you to trusting you. You have to understand that the moment you let something slide, you're setting a new precedent. Every time you stay silent when something disrespects your standard, every time you stay present when your peace is being disrupted, you're silently teaching her how to treat you. Not because she's evil, not because she's trying to manipulate, but because human beings always test the limits of what's allowed. And when you make exceptions for her just because she's attractive or having a rough day, those exceptions become the new standard. And the man who values himself knows his standards are not situational, they're non-negotiable. One of the most masculine responses to her testing your limits is disengagement, not out of anger, not to punish, but because sometimes silence is the loudest form of self-respect. You don't need to win the argument. You don't need to prove you're right. You just remove yourself from the emotional noise, and in doing so, you leave a void that she has to sit with, a void that forces her to ask, did I go too far? That space, that stillness, that's what teaches her more than any lecture, because your absence is a mirror, and it reflects back everything her behavior just cost her. The man who enforces boundaries without ever raising his voice, that man is dangerous in the best way possible, because he doesn't threaten, he doesn't chase, he doesn't even try to dominate, he simply leads through consistency. And women respect consistency more than they'll ever admit. When she knows that no matter how much she tests, you'll respond with calm, clean lines, she stops testing, not because she gave up, but because she finally feels safe enough to surrender. You have to treat your energy like your currency. You don't invest in disrespect. You don't invest in immaturity. You don't give your full presence to someone who's trying to stir confusion, because your presence is a privilege, not a default. And when you make her earn your peace, when you show her that love doesn't mean tolerance for chaos, she either elevates or eliminates herself. And either way, you win, because you've shown the world and yourself that your peace is worth more than any connection based on convenience or compromise. Understand this too, man. Holding your frame doesn't mean never feeling. It doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb or robotic. It means you choose when and how you express. You're not denying emotion, you're mastering it. So when she comes at you sideways, when she pushes, when she tries to provoke something, you don't flinch. You might feel the rise inside you, but you breathe through it. You respond from your grounded self, and in that control, she sees your real power. Not your size, not your status, your internal stillness. Most men think that if they set boundaries, they'll lose the girl. But here's the truth. If you lose her for protecting your peace, you never had her in the first place. If you lose her because you wouldn't bend to chaos, because you refuse to tolerate games or disrespect, then you didn't lose a woman, you dodged a bullet. The right woman, the one who's done her work, the one who wants a man she can respect, she'll never walk away from healthy boundaries. She'll lean into them, because they make her feel safe. They give her a structure where she can relax, where she can be soft, where she doesn't have to lead, because now you are. She'll never say it out loud, but what she's really asking when she tests you is this: can I trust you to lead when I don't know how to regulate myself? And your job isn't to match her chaos, it's to anchor her storm, not through dominance, but through calm masculine energy that doesn't bend under pressure. That's the difference between the man she uses for attention and the one she's terrified to lose. The first reacts, the second remains. And when you remain while she spins, she softens without knowing why. And here's the truth. Most men avoid. Sometimes standing your ground means walking away completely. No threats, no explanations, just removal. Because when a woman continually pushes your limits with no sign of growth, no accountability, no change, you're not being tested anymore. You're being trained to accept less than you deserve. And the man who respects himself knows this. Walking away is not weakness. It's the ultimate act of power. It says, I'd rather be alone in peace than partnered in chaos. And that standard, that silence, it echoes for years. But when you do this right, when you stay calm, when you enforce your lines, when you respond instead of react, you give her a man worth respecting, not because you demanded it, but because you moved like a man who doesn't flinch, who doesn't bend, who doesn't hand out his integrity to keep a vibe. And the more she feels that, the more she sees you as a leader, not a lover who begs. And that shift, that internal shift from seeking to choosing, that's what flips the entire dynamic. So remember this, man, Every test is a chance to show her how deeply you respect yourself, not with words, not with emotional outbursts, but with boundaries held in silence, with presence that doesn't chase, with distance that teaches. And when you live like that, when you stop letting tests define your worth and start letting them reveal your power, you don't just get her attention, you get her deep, unshakable respect. And that, brother, that's the only foundation worth building anything on.